Garbage man of Reddit, what is the most disturbing thing you've ever seen thrown away? I work at a waste-to-energy plant, and we find body parts occasionally. And it isn't from the medical waste. It's hard to say how often it occurs, as it burns just fine and gets mixed with the rest of the slag, so we generally won't even notice it. But if the furnace isn't running well, we can get unburned waste out the other end, which has to be handled manually. And there we've found a few limbs, fingers and even an eyeball over the years. One time, before I started working here, they had an entire human body pass through the furnace. It had been rolled up in a blanket, so the body was almost entirely unburned and the police were able to identify it easily. Full-time garbage man in a small town. We find cool shit more often than disturbing where I work. The one that bothers me personally is we pick up trash at the pound once a week. There are always dogs they've had to out down. They freeze them in these thick blue garbage bags. I wasn't on it last week, but I guess the guys had an exceptionally large bag and the guy inside said it was a 140-pound Great Dane. I found a cool tabletop Donkey Kong game once. Worth like $300. Not a garbage man, but when I was in second grade we had one of those Save the Environment days where we walked around town and collected garbage near roads and stuff. Anyways, after maybe half an hour we came across a big blue garbage bag. It was rather heavy and when we tried to move it, it ripped open, only to reveal 4 dead, half-rotten puppies. It was horrific for us kids and probably for our teacher, too, who suddenly had to deal with 25 hysterically crying 7-year-olds. And that was the last time our school participated in this kind of activity. I was a custodian for 3 years and living in California. I was horrified by how much water people wasted on a regular basis. I would clean up after an event in the gym and there would be 100 bottles of water opened, but basically full. This went for food too. So I guess wasteful behavior in general was the worst I would find. I found it more disturbing than the occasional bloody underwear in women's restrooms or feces on the floor. I once did temp work as a garbage man. I was 18 and lasted all of one day before I quit, and one item we came across was a sealed urn with the deceased's name printed on the side. I wrote the name down to be able to add realism to the story I would later tell, and it turned out it was someone my dad knew. Not a garbage man, but my sister found a kitten in a dumpster about a decade ago. He's alive and well in her house today and has a squeaky meow. Not a garbage man and not disturbing, but my friend found a PS4 in a dumpster a few weeks ago. Bruff at home, turned it on, works fine. I'm salty about it. One of our workers found the corpse of a young baby in the general waste yard. Police were called and it was on the national news. The company went into complete lockdown and panic mode for a few days. Wasn't fun at all and it effed the guy up pretty badly. I once worked in a biomedical waste facility for a day. My job was to help dump buckets of what I was told could be anything from syringes to body parts into a huge furnace. Smelled like the Holocaust in there. Worked at a hospital building where biomedical waste was burned. My job was unrelated, and this sickly stink would waft up the stairwell. I spoke to a guy in the basement who basically processed the waste for a living, and he explained how syringes poke through the waste bags, so it was normal to get covered in every kind of human waste a hospital disposes of when doing his job. Nobody should have to breathe that smell and let alone have it spill on them. Edit. This was a large research hospital the size of a university campus, tens of thousands of employees, not in the US, but in a place known for providing world-class healthcare. The only reason I would go into the basement, a massive underground level with tunnels, is to get to another building. The dude getting poked by needles was earning minimum wage and wasn't unionized, so if he complained the hospital would just tell him he could leave and hire someone else. As an above-grounder I felt crappy that this was happening to him, but if someone on a higher floor with higher education had had this problem it would be a huge health and safety deal. It would have made the news and been a PR disaster. But out of sight, out of mind. Hope that clarifies. Smile. Once I found a box of apples and I yelled for the guy I was working with. When he came around the truck and saw what I had, I said, "How do you like them apples?" One of my proudest moments as a human. Not a garbage man, but I have family that works at a plant waste recycling center and often help out. Now what we found isn't disturbing, but what it did was disturbing. So at this place we have these gigantic grinders, designed for shredding trees, piles of pallets, really anything wood so it can be turned to mulch. Now metal does go through these things, but it's usually small, things like brackets, bolts, screws and nails, and on the conveyor out of the grinder there is a magnet to pull it out. If anything too big for the grinder to handle will just jam the grinder. For context, the size of each grinder is around the size of a semi-truck trailer. In fact, many of them are built into trailers for easy transport, except the tub. The tub takes a minimum of 4 semi-trailers to transport, and with all its accessories, inbuilt mulch storage, spare parts, collection hopper, ground level loader, takes up 9, and these are your large 4-axle low-load semi-truck trailers. One time we had the tub operating, chewing through this pile that we wanted gone, and it was always growing as it was council cleanup week, so, next door is the solid waste center. We had a situation where a truck had come along and dumped its waste in the wrong area, so we had a bunch of non-plant waste to clear up all while more trucks kept arriving. We thought we had gotten everything. Skip to around 4 hours later, front loader is about to dump a load into the tub. Right as the load drops, that's when someone points it out. An almost complete V8 engine ended up getting dropped into the tub. You hear horrible grinding and heaps of yelling, then you hear the tub jam up. This is the first time ever that the tub has jammed. And before you know it, you hear a metallic chime, and the massive lump of metal that was a V8 engine gets thrown into the air. Everybody panics. You see workers running to hide in buildings. The evacuation alarm starts blaring. I don't even know what I tried to do. But whatever it was, I was in the open the whole time. Nobody saw where it went. We all assumed it went in the bushland surrounding the site and was lost. That is till we hear sirens of emergency vehicles coming from all around. I get in my car and drive towards the sirens. What ended up happening was the engine flew over to a highway around half a kilometer away, landed on top of a car that was driving and caused a multi-vehicle accident. Surprisingly no deaths, but the person who was in the car that the engine landed on is now a paraplegic. A box of prosthetic limbs. Some looked really old and rudimentary, some looked really modern and realistic. And they weren't all the same limb. There were full and half legs, arms with hands, arms with hooks, just feet with those metal rods, and what might have been a peg leg. Also, this reminds me, I've found mannequins and mannequin parts more often than you would expect. Former custodian, not the garbage woman, but the weirdest thing I've seen is an iPad. Our boss's iPad broke, and was most likely fixable, and her immediate reaction was to just throw it out in her office trash can. Like it was regular trash. This isn't disturbing, really, but it is strange. I can't think of anything disturbing except the occasional vomit. That's pretty gross. On the iPad subject, it gets weirder. My coworker and I saw it, and my coworker decided to fish it out, assuming it was a mistake. We were alone in the building for the night, so he locked it in the staff room for safekeeping. The next day he brought it into the boss's office and asked her if she'd meant to throw it out, and she flipped her lid and started screaming at him and accused him of stealing it. I had to go in and testify on his behalf that I'd seen what happened and that wasn't his intention. Which is ridiculous when you consider she intentionally threw it out. It was trash in her eyes. I'm glad I don't work there anymore. In my 3rd year of hazardous materials management, I performed a waste audit of a public hospital. 24 hours of waste from intensive care, maternity and emergency departments all heading to landfill. We discovered placenta, and lumps of flesh, force, syringes and large quantities of blood-soaked blueies. We presented our findings to both the hospital and our university. 24 hours later I had my first ever call from a CEO of the private management group running the public hospital. Conversation went like this: "If you present this to the press, we will sue you. We want all of your photographs, notes and paperwork. You didn't make us sign a confidentiality agreement, so I'll be holding on to the data etc. to protect myself from legal action." It was a harsh lesson in how private profit tries to destroy openness and gave me some insight into what I should expect from a career in waste management. An environmental engineer, and worked a few landfill projects and a project that brought me to a transfer hall. One of the landfill projects required us to drill sampling wells through the waste mass. Pulled up some interesting stuff, but nothing overly disgusting. The driller said he had been in NJ drilling a landfill and pulled up a horse's head. The transfer hall was disgusting. Brown-ass water, tons and tons of dirty diapers, lots of continental breakfast trash from hotels, and a few trash bins from butcher shops. Terrible project, and also the city could score a discount from the landfill. Long story. Not a garbage man, but I was doing research for an article I was writing about dumpster diving in GameStop dumpsters. I was diving myself, both in GameStop dumpsters and others from stores in a few different areas. The amount of waste that we have is absolutely astounding. People raise a stink about shopping bags and getting reusable ones, but the amount of perfectly fine consumer goods being tossed out is disgusting. On top of that, food being wasted is excessive. I'd recommend the documentary Dive for anyone interested in the topic. I'm sure our garbage man had a terrible one from us last week. One of my daughter's acquaintances played a revenge prank on her by picking up roadkill, a dead possum, and put it on her car windshield one night. It was payback because her and some of her girlfriends did the same thing to him some months ago. I made her be responsible for cleaning it up, so her and her BF decided it was a good idea to simply pick it up and put it in one of our trash carts. Immediately made them go back out there with multiple trash bags and fix that by putting it in those and tying each one. They didn't do a very good job and somehow managed to leave a huge chunk of skin/fur on the sidewalk in our backyard while doing so. Needless to say, after dealing with days of that shit sitting back there stinking, I decided to fix it myself and grab a few more trash bags and put on gloves and go clean that shit up best I could. Another animal had obviously got into the cart and ripped shit up, and I saw the rotting flesh with maggots and all sorts of creepy crawlies all over it and almost puked. I did triple bag that shit and even put another bag over the top of the cart, but man, I was never so glad to set that out on the curb and have it taken away. Was afraid maybe they wouldn't, but they did. I bet they thought I had murdered and threw away a baby or something. My God, that was the most awful smell I've ever had the displeasure of being around. Oh cool. I wonder what garbage men find? Wait, that's right, I'm a scale operator. I work at a dump. Asbestos. The most disturbing thing I find, at least once a month, is someone trying to sneak in asbestos-laden materials because he doesn't want to go through the red tape and hassle. All my co-workers have children, you shithead. Those panels you're dumping are going to be crushed into dust and aerosol everyone's throats and clothing. Finally, something I can answer. This is my moment. Anyways, one of my first weeks as a garbage man, I found a dead cat in a corner basket and was so taken aback I screamed. I love cats. I also find a lot of rats, but the most disturbing thing I found was someone left a dog, alive, in a shopping cart on a side street. I went to grab the cart to toss it in the truck and saw the little guy. He was all burned or had some skin problems. My buddy had a friend who works for a shelter and got him cleaned up and got him adopted. Basically, I find a lot of animals. My brother and I, when we were like 6 and 10, were goofing around the apartment where we were living at the time in Anchorage. For some reason I looked under a dumpster at the apartment complex and saw something, so I grabbed it. It was a grenade. Like a real-life grenade, except the handle had been taped to the body of the grenade and the pin holding the detonator handle in was missing. Live grenade. We were idiots, so we took it to our apartment to our dad, who had been in the military, and showed him what we found. His eyes were immediately like the size of dinner plates and he got real quiet. Hand it to me. Slowly, son. I was like, sure, here it is. He went downstairs to the parking lot, placed it gingerly in the dumpster, and called the police. Bomb squad came later and took it away. Not a garbage man, but many years ago when I lived in an apartment, I walked by the garbage bin and all these video games were coming down the chute from an upstairs apartment. I watched them come down, followed by a Nintendo. I got in the bin, scooped them up, along with a bunch of Blu-rays that followed. I think it was some girlfriend who found out her boyfriend was cheating or something because I put all that stuff on eBay and got a few hundred for it all. Just at the right place at the right time. Definitely the time we picked up an adult dairy cow that had been left there to die. It was missing its udder, but had not yet bled out, and the nearest vet was able to save it. It wasn't until about a month later, I was walking through downtown and somebody sprayed me in the face with milk. I looked to see who had done it, and saw a man walking away wearing an udder like a fanny pack. I was genuinely freaked out at that point. I worked for the local highway department, and on rainy days we did roadside pickup to keep the town looking nice. Usually just lots of fast food wrappers and empty nips of booze/wine. One day I found a small box with 4 dead baby deer in it. They were clean, no blood, no obvious wounds. They were all about house cat sized. My initial thought was that maybe someone had killed a pregnant doe, and got these when cleaning the animal, but the box was on the roadside, And they had been placed in a box and not just left or buried where they would have been found, and no sign of a dead deer around. Also, quadruplets would be very rare in whitetails. Never learned the story, but it was weird as hell. Not a bin man, but I managed the waste contract on behalf of our local council, municipality. I've been in the job for 8 years, and in that time we've had 2 bodies dumped in bins. First body was a guy who was murdered by his wife and then put in the bin and left out for collection. The bin man couldn't move it as it was too heavy to go on the back of the wagon, and the bin loader opened the lid and saw the dead body. Second body was more gruesome and was chopped up and put in the bin. This one went into the back of the wagon and was only noticed when they went to the landfill site to dump off and noticed the limbs falling out the back of the wagon. 311 in NYC gets all kinds of questions, and these go into an internal report. One of the oddest questions asked, "How do you dispose of a dead horse in the city?" Weirder still, the response, "Drag it to the curb and it will be picked up by a garbage truck." Not a garbage man, but I once found clothes. Yes. New and fresh clothes dumped away in a trash can because the people who threw it away couldn't be bothered to give it to the poor or to charity. Despicable and a waste of money. Full-time garbage man in rural area of Pennsylvania. We had an Amish man who would process deer for people during hunting season. He also had cows and pigs that he would butcher. He hung the animals over the dumpster and skinned/gutted them directly into the dumpster. I walked back and flipped the lids open to find an entire dumpster full of guts, blood, and poop. The dumpster was so heavy that when we lifted it onto the truck, you could watch the truck's suspension drop from the weight. This happened every Wednesday for 3 months. Not garbage man really, but handled trash at a huge shopping mall. And people dumped a lot of weird stuff. But the cages with pigeons thrown in a dumpster, we found one that was alive, was quite disturbing. The 70s or 80s electric organ was one of the funniest things I found in the morning, but that was just odd. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.